Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Stephanie Frederick. I am the Associate Director of the Alberta Center for Bullying Abuse Prevention, which is part of the Graduate School of Education at the University at Buffalo. I am so excited to be here today. And so I'm going to talk today mostly about cyberbullying. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the commonly asked questions or frequently asked questions that we tend to get quite a bit about cyberbullying in terms of what it is, how common is it, where does it happen, what should we do, what can we do about it. So I'm hoping to spend the majority of my time today talking about that and providing to some resources. Before I do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Alberta Center and a little bit about what we do there. So the Alberta Center for Bullying Abuse Prevention is a research and outreach center. So one of our primary missions is to conduct research and share knowledge with the public just about bullying and related behaviors. So bullying, harassment, discrimination, child abuse and other school-based violent behaviors. Just in terms of learning what it is and how to prevent it. And so most of our research has revolved around that. I do research on cyberbullying. I typically do research on cyberbullying among middle and high school students, as well as some of my research is on college students as well and their experiences with cyberbullying, and how that sort of is associated with media use and the kinds of media use that tend to maybe be ripe for cyberbullying experiences. The other thing that we do at the Alberta Center is we do a lot of outreach with either with schools or other universities or community agencies, where we provide trainings and presentations and workshops to families, students, educators, teachers, mental health professionals, that sort of thing, just about bullying prevention. And we have all of this information actually on our website. So if you go to UB Alberta Center for Bullying Abuse Prevention, we have all of the workshops and presentations that we provide, as well as so many resources that we just updated our resource section, but we have a lot of resources there for students, for parents, as well as educators and teachers. So hopefully you have a minute to check that out. So I want to spend the rest of my time talking about cyberbullying, and I think that most of us generally have an idea, right, of what cyberbullying and bullying is. This is not a new concept, for most of us. And really, what cyberbullying is it's an intentional, repeated, aggressive behavior that is inflicted through online spaces or electronic devices. So typically, we see cyberbullying happen in social media apps or websites. So we think about like Instagram, right, Twitter, Snapchat, and other, as well as sites that allow you to be anonymous. Cyberbullying tends to be more frequent on those sites. We also see cyberbullying occur quite a bit in online gaming. Again, particularly in those games that where you can be anonymous, or you're playing with other people and you don't know who they are. One of the questions that we get quite a bit is, what's the difference between an act or an incident of cyberbullying and just somebody maybe that's being mean, or just sort of a general aggressive behavior. So there's a couple things that you're going to want to look for to really determine if something would be considered bullying or cyberbullying. One of the first things to look for is that the behavior is intentional. It's intentionally distressing to someone, so to the target or the victim, and so that person is really trying to cause you harm or distress, in some way. It's not, if my friend shared a picture of me on Facebook and I thought it was, kind of humiliating or embarrassing, but they didn't think it was, they didn't think that same way. That obviously is not going to be considered cyberbullying. Um, Another thing that you're going to want to look for is that it is repeated over time. So, really, just one person maybe saying something mean to you or maybe calling you a name is not really likely to be in the realm of cyberbullying. If it sort of happens one time, you give them that feedback, say knock it off, and they do. That tends not to be considered cyberbullying. So, really, it should be repeated over time, or in the online space sort of shared or repeated or reposted or retweeted, over time, so that it reaches a wider audience. That would be considered cyberbullying. And then the last, I think, one of the most important distinctions is that there should be some sort of imbalance of power between the person that's engaging um, in the aggressive behavior and the person that's sort of on the receiving end of that. And there's a lot of different ways that someone can have power over someone else. And so if we think about more of those like traditional schoolyard bullying behavior, that we tend to think of power as being like physically bigger or physically stronger, than someone else. But there's so many other ways to have power over someone. It could be that you have more friends than someone. Maybe you're perceived as being more popular at someone. With cyberbullying, it could be that you have more tech skills than someone else. So you have the ability to maybe hack into a website or log on as, someone else, or be anonymous in some way. And so that, in that sense, you can have power over someone else. If it could also be if you're in an online game and you're really good at that game and you're playing with someone that's not so good. That would be, you'd have power over that person because you have more skills. And so there's a lot of different ways to sort of look at that. So that, I think that's just something to take into consideration, particularly as you are in these online spaces and thinking about just that power differential, and maybe how someone might have more skills, or if you have more skills than someone else, just to be aware, and mindful of that and your behavior. In terms of prevalence or how common cyberbullying is, there's not, just a, one prevalence rate. It tends to vary. It particularly, it varies over time. Among middle and high school students, we typically see about 15 to 35% of students experience cyberbullying, at one point in their sort of their school careers. With college students, we've seen a range as low as 5% of students are reporting experiencing cyberbullying, up to 40% or so. So, a little bit under half. So it's not, it's not that the majority of people are experiencing cyberbullying. It's not something that we should all be experiencing. It's not a rite of passage. Cyberbullying is an incredibly harmful experience that can have really harmful and long lasting effects, for you or for someone else. And so if you're experiencing cyberbullying, or you see someone else experiencing cyberbullying, it is not okay. And we'll talk a little bit about what you can do to help, or, if you're experiencing it yourself, what you can do to prevent it or report it. The other thing that we get a lot of questions about is if the COVID-19 pandemic actually has increased levels or experiences of cyberbullying, because we are all clearly all online, right, as we are now. We're clearly all occupying online spaces, using the internet a lot more than we used to. And the honest answer to that is that we don't know, actually, if the COVID-19 pandemic has actually sort of resulted in an increase in these aggressive online behaviors. We do know that people are experiencing more stress at this time, more anxiety, higher levels of depressive symptoms, higher levels of substance abuse, and going online more. And so that certainly makes this environment a bit more ripe for these sorts of behaviors. That being said, we also know that there's a very strong overlap between experiences and conflict in real life, when you're actually physically by people, and what happens in your on your Facebook feed and things like that. And so because we're not, in person, because we're not going, most of us are not going to school with our peers and things like that right now, we might not actually see an increase in cyberbullying, given the fact that most of us are online most of our days now. So we really don't know at this point what is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on cyberbullying. We have, unfortunately, actually seen an increase in prejudice-based posts, bias-based bullying and harassment on social media sites. And so we've seen an increase in bullying that really targets individuals' social identities or protected classes, so things like race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religious beliefs. We have seen an increase in those types of cyberbullying behaviors, unfortunately, in the last couple of months. So in my last couple minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about how you can protect yourself and sort of help prevent cyberbullying. I think that many of the other presentations that are a part of this fair went over a lot about how to protect yourself and privacy settings and things like that on online. And I certainly don't have enough time here to sort of talk about, each of these, but keeping your privacy settings high on all of your accounts, being sort of digitally responsible, just as you are responsible in real life. Most of us lock our houses before we leave. We lock our cars, right, before we leave our car. So just thinking, having that same mindset for all of your online behavior, and just being really smart about that. Try to avoid games or apps where either you can be anonymous or the people that you are virtually with can be anonymous. Those sort of environments, as I said, tend to be a little bit more harmful and conducive to bullying and harassment. So be very aware and be very careful, on those sites. And in terms of online gaming, if at all possible, if you can play with your group of friends or people that you know in real life, that's going to be helpful as well. And if you yourself experience cyberbullying, I would recommend that you try and save the evidence of that, either print it out or take a screenshot of it. Try not to get really angry in the moment or take it personally. Generally, trying to seek revenge is going to make the situation worse. So take a minute to cool off, step away, maybe close the app, take a minute from the game, and just take a deep breath or take a walk, and just take a second to sort of compose yourself. If at all possible, block the person, or mute them. If you're playing in an online game and someone's harassing you and you can just mute them and continue playing, and that's what you want to do, that's sort of a great way to sort of help stop it in the moment. One of the most beneficial things you can do is actually report the person to the site or the game. And you might not think that it might not do anything if just you yourself are reporting them. But if multiple people have been reporting them, and if the event or the incident is really severe, feedback that I've gotten is that a lot of sites or apps, they actually block the person or they take their privileges away. So there's a lot of motivators for people to actually be, responsible human beings on these sites. So that's certainly something that you're going to want to do. And then also try and just talk to someone about it. So tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a parent, tell someone else, about their experience, and or about your experience, so you can just sort of help problem solve, what you can do. Now, if you see someone else being the target of harassment or bullying, some of the research that we've actually found is that one of the most beneficial things that you can do for someone is actually just support them or check in with them, even after the fact. So if you don't want to, if you're playing in an online game and someone's being harassed and you don't maybe want to stick up for them in that moment because you're afraid then that they will maybe start to target you, one of the best things you can do is send them a private chat or a private message, or send them a message after the fact, check in with them, make sure they're okay, see if they want to play with you, at a different time. Maybe help them figure out how to report the incident or report it for them. In our research, we found that when targets or victims of bullying, someone just checks in with them, when a friend or a peer or a classmate checks in with them after the fact, they feel much less anxiety, much less distress as a result of the event. So it could be just as simple as that. Some good resources as I wrap up my time here that I want to share. So, I talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but our website, so the Alberta Center for Bullying and Abuse Prevention, we have a lot of great resources on there for bullying as well as cyberbullying and internet safety. So feel free to check those out and use those. The Cyberbullying Research Center also has a lot of great resources for internet safety, and they also have things like for parents out there, they have like technology contracts and things like that, and resources for educators. Um, some resources that are really great for women and internet safety is Feminist Frequency is a great website for that. Take Back the Tech is also a great website to look at some guides and recommendations that are specific for women in online spaces, particularly in online gaming, as it can be a bit more often a bit more harmful for women on those spaces. And then Connect Safely also has links for how to report abuse, harassment, or bullying in a lot of the public or more popular social media providers. So that's also a great resource to use. So I think that's it for my time. I think my time is up, but thank you so much for listening. And also feel free to reach out to me for any other questions you have, or if I can be a resource to you, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on the website as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your time and expertise. And you did touch upon the fact that bullying is something that happens at all age ranges. I think in some cases people think, well, that's a little kid, or it's a middle school or a high school type of an issue. I'm in college, I should have things together. I shouldn't have to either think about that, or maybe that's not what's really happening. So what do you say to people who either say, well, this is not really a college issue, or people who are victims or potential victims?
Yeah, so we know that cyberbullying occurs, as young as elementary school and across, the entire age span. So if you're occupying an online space, then you certainly can be a victim or target of cyberbullying. One thing that we do know is that if you are involved in bullying in some way during your school age years, so if you think about like K through 12th grade, that tends to be where the focus of bullying tends to be on, right? And I think you're right. I think when we think of or hear the word bullying, we think of students in elementary, middle, or high school. But we know that bullying that occurs at that age, for those individuals, they are much more likely to be involved in bullying, beyond high school. And so I don't know the exact percentage, or sort of risk factor. But certainly if you're involved in bullying, either as a victim or a target or both, you're much more likely to be involved in bullying, particularly cyberbullying, after the fact. And so this can happen in workspaces. It can happen, in really sort of any part of your life, after middle and high school.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Again, our time's a little bit limited, but does anyone else have a question for Stephanie?
Hey, Stephanie, you mentioned that there was a lot of racial slash, do you think that has to do with the current climate and the election, or why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know of any research that allows us to really make that causal statement to say it's the pandemic, or it's the election season, or it's Black Lives Movement, right? That's really sort of occurring, is very strong right now. So I don't know that we can say any of that. I will say that it seems that all of these events seem to be occurring all at once at a time that we are online basically 24/7. And so I do think that it's a mix of, the fact that the different components of our life has all sort of meshed into our screen, at this moment, along with the, everything else that's happening in terms of events, the political climate, social climate. I certainly think that could be a reason for some of the increase that we see in some of these prejudice-based posts.